Hi, friends. Welcome back. Just as a quick reminder before we start today, if you have not completed the first day of reading strategies, which is day 1, 4, 6, which is activity C1, author's purpose. And then if you haven't watched my video and completed day 2 in reading strategies, which was 4, 7, and that activity was D4, titled Identify Text Structures, then you need to go back and do that now, because today will not make sense unless you have completed day 1 and day 2 with the corresponding activities. And I want to make sure that you understand what's happening. If you have completed those, go ahead and take a look at the notes for today. Today we're going to be moving on in another section of reading strategies called Determining the Main Idea. Now, determining the main idea is what we use when we're trying to think of what the most important thought was the author had about the topic they were discussing. So, for example, the first thing we need to do when we're reading any text is decide what is the author's purpose. And we've been touching on this every video so far. The author's purpose is either to persuade, to inform, or to entertain. Those are the only 3 reasons that authors write. And in order to know the main idea, we first have to know what type of text we're reading and why the author is writing, because that will help us to determine the main idea. Take a moment now, if you haven't already, and write this chart again on your notes. I want it to be so ingrained in your memory you will never forget it. Draw your big old pie, separate it into 3 sections, and write persuasive, informative, and entertaining. If you want to be real crazy and go back to our video from yesterday, go ahead and take a minute now and write down the text structures for informative writing that we reviewed yesterday. Cause and effect, compare and contrast, sequence, descriptive, and problem solution. You can jot those down in informative, that way you don't forget. As we said, when we're looking at main idea, we first have to decide what is the author's purpose. So as I read, I'm thinking, is my author persuading me? Is my author informing me? Or is my author trying to just entertain me, to make me laugh? Until we know that, it's very difficult to determine what the main idea is. So we're going to read and think about which type our text is. Once we know what our type is, whether it's persuasive, informative, or entertaining, then the questions we ask ourselves to find the main idea are a little bit different. For example, if our author is persuading us, we have to think, what is the author trying to convince me of? What is the claim they are making? Because the main idea probably has to do with that. If the author is just informing us about a particular topic, we have to ask ourselves, what is the author informing us about? What is the main topic they're describing? And then, do we see any elements of our particular informative text structure? So do we see any compare and contrasting? Do we see any sequencing or any descriptive words? Do we see problems and solutions made? Or do we see any other type of elements that show us what type of text structure we're looking at within the informative umbrella? If our author is entertaining us, then what is the most important thing that is happening to the character in the text? And can that be related to my own life? Because maybe that's the main idea. One kind of pro tip is that sometimes the title of the text you're reading will tell you what the author's purpose is, which is very fascinating when the author kind of gives us the purpose by giving us a title that tells us, kind of hints at it. We're going to look now at IXL. Take a moment and pull up A1, determining the main idea, and we'll see if we can walk through these steps together. All right, so now I'm over here on my very first text practice on A1, determine the main idea. Now, as we said, the first thing we do when we read any text is decide what the author's purpose is. Is the author persuading, informing, or entertaining? So I'm going to read my text once, including the title, to see if I get any hints about what my author is trying to do. Persuade, inform, or entertain. Eat carrots, see better. So our author is posing a question as a title. Carrots contain high amounts of vitamin A and are good for general eye health. However, carrots will not improve night vision. That myth goes back to British propaganda during World War II. In 1940, the German Luftwaffe, or Air Force, began bombing Britain at night. In response, the British government ordered people to turn off their lights. The government wanted to make it difficult for German pilots to hit their targets. A new technology, radar, allowed the British Air Force to track and shoot down the German planes without light. To keep the technology secret, the government told the media that their pilots could see the German planes because they consumed so many carrots. Consequently, people began to believe that eating carrots would help them see better in the dark. Now, I know right away this is not an entertaining piece. It doesn't have any plot elements. It is telling a story, but nothing with rising action, climax, etc. It's just kind of talking about something. So I'm going to rule out entertaining. This is not an entertaining piece. I'm left with persuasive or informative. As I look through, I start to see that perhaps it could be persuasive because our author starts by asking us a question. Eat carrots, see better. But then I think the whole point of the text is not to try to persuade me about carrots. I mean, there's no claim here. It's just telling me up front that there's a fact. Carrots contain high amounts of vitamin A. That's a fact. That's nothing that's an opinion. It's just a fact about carrots. So it makes me wonder if the topic of my text is going to be about carrots in general and maybe what carrots have to do with this historical element. So I've determined that I think that this text is informative. It's not persuasive, it's not entertaining, it's informative. So I'm going to come down to my prompting questions. When thinking about main idea, I know that my text is informative. So since my text is informing me about something, I have to ask myself the question, what topic is the author trying to inform me about? What elements do I see? So I know it's informative. I have to decide what is the topic of my text? And then do I see any elements of cause and effect, problem solution, etc. in my text that I'm reading, since I know it's informative? I'm reading here and my thinking question is, what topic is the author trying to inform me about? As I read, I look at my second sentence and see that it says, carrots will not improve night vision. That myth goes back to British propaganda during World War II. So I get the feeling my author is about to tell me about World War II and how this myth around carrots was started. Interesting. So now I'm seeing informative elements like dates. In 1940, the German Air Force began bombing Britain. So now I'm seeing events like World War II, dates 1940. That also proves to me it is informative. And it helps me know what he's talking about because the topic is all about World War II. But how do the carrots come into play? Then I see it says that because the Air Force began bombing Britain at night, the British government wanted to have all the people in the city turn their lights out. The government wanted to make it difficult for German pilots to hit their targets. That makes sense to me. So all the lights in the city are out. And then it says a new technology allowed British Air Force to track and shoot down German planes. So they had this technology that allowed them to have no lights and still be able to see planes to shoot them down. But then it says, to keep the technology a secret, the government told the media their pilots could see the German planes because they consumed so many carrots. So now the British government is lying because they want to keep the technology to themselves and saying, oh, it's all these carrots that we're eating. It's good for our eyes. We see this keyword here, consequently. Consequently is a massive cause and effect word. It shows me that because one thing happened, there was a consequence. Something else happened. Consequently, people began to believe that eating carrots would help them see better in the dark. So this is not only an informative text, it is a cause and effect text. And our author is informing us that because of this lie that Britain gave their people, the effect was a myth was started about carrots. Let's look at which one of our options gives us the closest thing to our thinking. Number one, because of a British media campaign, people thought that eating carrots would improve their night vision. Or two, during World War II, the British government told the media their pilots ate a lot of carrots. Obviously, it's one, we see this big signal word because of this, the British media campaigning about this element of this lie, so to speak. Due to this happening, the effect was people thought that eating carrots would improve their night vision. I figured out what the text type was. It was informative. Then what type of informative text it was. It was cause and effect. The only cause and effect sentence in this answer option is 1. And I got it. Good luck, you guys. A1 main idea. Go kill it.